Honestly, I don't know about you, but for me, and just about everyone I knew growing up in the 70s, the absolute highlight of school was the lunch boxes we'd proudly carry each day. Let's peek inside and see what delicious surprises kids unwrapped at lunch back then. Today you take some Lunchables and call it a day. Pepperoni, cheese, a makeshift dough that'll probably anger several Italians. Yeah, that's a modern-day lunchbox. But back then, Danish rings were actually popular in some areas of America as a snack. They would hold way easier than Danish go-rounds, and the crunchiness of the ring itself made for the perfect snack. When you're having lunch, you don't really need a full-blown meal like you'd get at home, but you kind of want something that'll just put some pep back in your step. It would be pretty odd for some kid today to pull up with Danish rings to school, but I guess that just goes to show how times change, don't they? Personally, I think it's a little too old-fashioned for me. Danish rings might be alright as snacks, but taking it as a lunchbox every day might be a bit overboard. I'd definitely switch it up with some other items on the list to keep things fresh. They couldn't catch on as a mainstream snack though, because even if they held better than go-rounds, they would still tend to get squished or messy. Plus, it wasn't until the late 80s that parents went all in on convenience food and snacks for lunchboxes instead of homemade items. I grew up with a lot of Kraft. It was a cheap, affordable cereal brand that knew how to get the job done, and honestly, you can't ask for much more. One of their most prolific ones, I think, was Kugel in 1971. Despite it having a relatively short career to stuff like Frosties, the flavored peanut spread knew its market and it came at it viciously. It came in all kinds of flavors that were just aimed right at kids, and looking back, they had some pretty good aim. It was so hard to resist that banana and vanilla as a kid. I mean, a lot of parents, especially single ones, didn't always have the time to prepare a full-fledged lunchbox with different sections and assortments of food. Sometimes you just need something that gets the job done quick and gets it done right, and Kugel was perfect for that. Parents eventually became more aware about the nutritional value that their children were getting out of stuff like store-bought cereals and packaged food. But for the time it was there, it did pretty good. Honestly, I wouldn't mind having a bowl as an office lunch, even as an adult. Lipton's a pretty global brand. You could go from America to Pakistan and still recognize it, but it was in the 70s that they were known for a very specific kind of instant lunch that was a lot like cup noodles were, but think of the textures of spaghetti instead of what you would normally associate with instant noodles. Muggo Lunch came in flavors like spaghetti, noodles with cheese sauce, and even barbecue, and its biggest selling point was easily that this is a pretty convenient lunch to pack for your kid as they merrily embark on their way to school. It actually didn't get its start that way, though. It started as an after-school snack that parents would serve to their kids, but they then saw the value of sending them to school with it. It was more popular with kids in grade school because they had a better appreciation for things like this. Usually, kids in elementary stuck to some pretty basic foods, but there was one issue with Muggo Lunch. You needed hot water to prepare it, and sometimes, some parents would expect the kids to do that themselves, though the reason is beyond me. Anyway, not every school had access to hot water, so Muggo Lunch eventually faded out in favor of more accessible lunches. Banana Flips were these extremely popular snack cakes that came as a result of Nichols Bakery doing some product innovation, and they completely outsold the competition. Think of the softest banana-flavored cake you have, and think about it being filed with the creamiest, richest filling you've ever conceived in your head. These banana flips were more than a treat. They were an experience, a delightful break in a school day, and a reliable classic to come back to. Parents felt like they were giving their kids something substantial, while kids felt like they had the best dessert in their hands without it even being dessert. There was something so fun about unwrapping the foil, that unmistakable smell of bananas and sweet cream hitting the air, and taking that first bite. Whether as an after-school snack or a midday surprise, banana flips had a reputation of their own. Other snack cakes just couldn't compete with this powerhouse of taste, texture, and nostalgia. Truly, a piece of 70s lunchbox history, banana flips were here to bring joy, satisfy cravings, and turn a regular school lunch into a treat worth remembering. It's absolutely the perfect lunch or dish to send your kids to school with. It became a lunchbox favorite because even if you did put this in a lunchbox for a few hours, it could completely withstand everything and still be just as fresh as when you got it off the store. It was a great way to get that sweet tooth satisfied and kept in check without going overboard with some home baking. Pizza spins, on the other hand, were this snack that General Mills came up with in the 1960s. The idea here was to come up with a pizza that was also a snack. So let's think of this as like the grandfather of Lunchables, but this time they actually succeeded at what they were trying to do. They were this endearing mix of tomato, cheese, and spices that actually mimicked the pizza flavor quite well. It was supposed to be this spiral-shaped pizza, and it was definitely really popular for the kids. It was mess-free, easy to pack, flavorful, and affordable, making it a standout in the lunchbox category that parents couldn't resist giving their kids. Makes sense too. You get an instant version of a pizza, and even if it isn't the real thing, you'd be tempted to take it to school too. It's just how the world is. The kid that ends up bringing pizza to school always just does a bit better than the others. Even at a grade school level, politicking never stops. Speaking of quick and easy comfort food that'll keep your kids filled and quiet, Hunt's Snack Pack Chocolate Pudding was arguably the undisputed heavyweight champ of this stuff. It was packaged in these small metal cans, and it could easily be put into a lunchbox, so it already had packaging and portability covered. Hey, believe it or not, that's a big marketing goal for snacks to fill. The easier it is to walk around with them and pop one open whenever you need it, the better it sells. And that's just not something Hunt's Snack Pack Chocolate Pudding ever had to worry about. Plus, that was the early days of the pudding. Later on, the design went from a plastic cup and it was made even more lunchbox friendly. Also, probably their best quality was the fact that you didn't need to refrigerate these, and then they also came in a lot of different flavors beyond just chocolate, so suffice it to say, this thing had all the steam and creativity it needed to capture a serious chunk of the market itself, and kids were definitely enamored with what they were getting. You'd always hear a kid or two begging their parents to get the chocolate pudding in most typical grocery stores, so if you were around in the 80s, you definitely know what I'm talking about. Space food sticks were something that Pillsbury came up with in the 1990s, and this was a snack that had, as you can guess from the name itself, a lot of themes centered around the starry and cold expanse that is space. It was also meant to be designed with astronauts in mind. No, they weren't selling the stuff to astronauts, but they knew what they had to pull with children. At the time, in the 1980s, there was nothing that invoked a sense of adventure and thrill more nigh a child than an astronaut braving all odds and going to space just like their favorite superheroes. So when they got the food sticks, you can only guess how well the advertising and packaging may have worked. These dry sticks were peanut butter, caramel, and chocolate flavored, and its whole shtick was how it was space food. That definitely made it catch on even more with kids who were younger and a lot more gullible, but hey, it had a long shelf life, it was transportable, and it was cheap enough. What kind of parent passes up on a good snack to shut your kid up with? Cheese Tidbits by Sunshine are these small and cheesy crackers which were for like a few cents apiece. If you compared them to a modern-day invention, then they would be a lot like Cheez-Its, and those are the delicious bite-sized squares you always see children fawning over. As a snack, they were easy to appeal to kids with. They had everything you needed going for them after all. Kids enjoyed easy, savory snacks that came with a cheesy kick and a crunchy bite. That really was the formula, and it honestly still is. So you can imagine how well they do with children. They were packed in these portion sizes, which made them perfect for binging. And sometimes, if your kid wanted a lighter snack but still something that they could enjoy at school easily on their own, then this was the perfect thing to give them. Plus, it wasn't just savory. It had some pretty nice sweet notes too, which made it a bit different from the other cheese-based snacks of the time. So far, we got some killer products from the likes of General Mills, and you'd be sorely wrong if you missed other Titanic names like Nabisco, which came up with their own bite-sized snacks which did massive numbers. They were known as Toastettes, and they were like these Pop-Tart toaster pastries that were a pretty famous competitor for Kellogg's own food lines aimed at children. These Toastettes would usually have berry-based fillings, which also made them more popular whenever one of those like strawberries or blueberries were in season. They also had apple cinnamon, and the Toasty itself was like a sandwich with these fillings with optional frosting if you wanted to go for it. You know how McDonald's intends you to eat its fries and its sundae separately? Well, Toastettes are supposed to be toasted right as you get them, but a lot of kids enjoyed skipping that part and just treating it like a dessert. Plus, the fact that they would remain cold in metal containers meant that they had a pretty long and refreshing shelf life, and that made them ideal for hotter states like Arizona and California. Toastettes were also packaged in a way that made them super easy to grab on the go. Kids could stuff them in their lunchboxes, backpacks, or even their pockets, making them the ultimate in portable snacks. And since they were more filling than regular cookies or crackers, they felt like a mini meal rather than just a sugary treat. Some parents even felt they were healthier than other options, with their fruit-based fillings and pastry shell, which made them seem a bit closer to real food. Tuna Twist was this seasoning mix that General Foods came up with in the 1970s. Plain canned tuna on its own was an extremely boring and bland dish. I mean, to be fair, anything would get that way after literal years of eating it, especially after kids had to get so used to rationing and eating low-tier food like canned tuna every day for dinner. But that's why they had things like Tuna Twists, giving the old reliable a new kick that restored its spark in the eyes of the people. It came in packets that had flavors like onion or cheddar, and the cheddar one obviously did better. The catch is they tend to be mixed with tuna and mayo, which makes it a tuna salad, and they were actually really good for these quick and easy DIY sandwiches. They didn't even really need a lot of work to assemble, but if you were giving them as a lunchbox meal, you needed to be prepared for. Tuna Twists didn't do that well with children because it just wasn't a taste that they were really familiar with, but parents are nothing if not crafty. They'd make sandwiches out of these and dress it up with some bacon or chips and barbecue sauce, and kids wouldn't even be able to tell the difference. So don't be fooled. These got more mileage than you'd think. Pop Rocks actually hit the shelves somewhere around the mid of the 1970s, and these were just a super hit from the get-go. They were these small pieces of carbonated candy, and they made a very fizzy popping sensation when kids ate them, and that made them a novelty. It is said that when a kid would discover a Pop Rock, they would experience the same euphoria of a promotion at work. These were also really popular among the playground, as kids would always be enjoying Pop Rocks while playing around with their friends in the sand. It's the little things like that which really add to the whole aspect of making it aimed for kids, you know? They enrich those little daily experiences that make up everything a child needs to have. Plus, despite these being candy, they didn't really even need any kind of refrigeration. They just needed to be packed properly, and kids could even show them off because at first they were a little pricey and rare, so it was like being the cool kid when you decided to bring them to school. Nabisco Snackmate Cheese was this line of processed cheese spreads that came in a bit of an unconventional packaging, which was pressurized cans. They were supposed to be enjoyed as an after-school snack, and they were a lunchbox edition. Kids could usually take it along as a spread and put it on top of whatever their actual meal was in the lunchbox, like crackers with mate cheese spread all over them. Parents would often send their children with breadsticks or give them other kinds of foods like pita breads that you could spread the cheese on, and honestly, it worked pretty well. If you got a hot dog and some Snackmate cheese, then you could consider yourself the luckiest person alive. The cheese spread was incredibly popular. It was a little messy, but that made it even more enticing because it gave off that gooey, melted cheese vibe that a lot of cheese products would desperately aim for. Snackmate had a lot of portability too, since it was one of the first pre-packed cheese snacks to do it. Either way, this had all the support it needed to end up being a market favorite. Donka Toaster Snacks were kind of a runner-up to Pop-Tarts, but they were still really popular in the 1970s. They just didn't have the same star factor appeal that Pop-Tarts did. But hey, that's no reason to be ashamed. Second place in a competitive market like America is still a pretty good brag. Though they could have done more to separate themselves and have their own identity, which kids love. No, really, why do you think Hot Wheels did so well? Think they were the first company to notice that young boys love toy sports cars that go zoom really fast? They just set themselves apart like that. These ones were seen as a discount version of Pop-Tarts because they were also a toaster pastry and came in flavors with fruit or sweet fillings and sometimes they had frosted tops. That's basically Pop-Tart's entire flow, but I digress. Sometimes a similar product isn't the best way to go. It's not really the worst either. Pepsi and Coke are both bar for bar almost the same, but you still get people fawning over both. Kids definitely had the same reaction to these toaster snacks too, especially because they held together really well, and the individual packaging meant that they were wonderful as far as packing them into lunchboxes went. A really ideal, no fuss and no mess dessert, unless you had Pop-Tarts, of course. Aspen Soda was supposed to be this apple-flavored soda that was introduced by PepsiCo, and it was brought forward in 1978. The entire appeal of this thing was that it was a great alternative to traditional cola, and it had everything that conventional forms of cola didn't. Soda couldn't be a lunchbox item because it had a size and weight that just wasn't suitable for most lunchboxes. But Aspen's took care of that with a nifty little packaging that made it perfect for taking along as a lunchbox to school with, and it became an occasional novelty too. Kids would bring it to school on many occasions, and older kids who were in bigger classes had access to vending machines, since parents still were not too keen on sending their kids to school with soda every day. It also came in a glass bottle, and that meant that it stayed chiller for longer and had a better overall taste. It gained a pretty strong niche following, so I guess they definitely did do some things right. Marathon Bar was introduced by Mars in 1973, and it was a chocolate caramel bar that had one thing going for it. Boy, when I tell you this thing was long, I need you to imagine over 8 entire inches. For a caramel bar! Now, I love my sugar rushes just as much as the next person does, but at some point you gotta draw the line, right? Though, personally, I love them a little too much and would like an extra large version. Anyway, back to the children that enjoyed these. So this bar had a lot more supporting its wow factor, but the length was definitely the biggest attraction. The chewy and gooey texture of the bar meant that it was amazing for kids, who were already big fans of chocolate bars like that anyway. They were a great lunchbox item, and were often a popular pick for school parties too, and they made the best of both worlds by including chocolate and caramel. They became an incredible choice for children in the 1970s, and they held up really well in lunchboxes. Plus, the packaging was really recognizable to children. Crazy Cow cereal was another popular item by General Mills in the middle of the 1970s, and this was a breakfast cereal that came in only 2 flavors, which was a little odd for cereals at the time, and they were chocolate and strawberry. What made this really special was that it was milk that had been turned into a flavored milkshake, and that meant that it was interactive. You know what they say, the best way to make food for kids is to make sure it's something they can mess around with too. Parents caught on to that early, and they would often pack some Crazy Cow cereal as a side for their children. It had a short run because it would get discontinued sometime into the 80s, but a lot of the early short-term success it had because of kids that loved the cereal made it a novelty item that still got remembered even after it bowed out and went out of the rat race. String cheese was an honest-to-God lunchbox classic that did everything right. Okay, so you had these cheese sticks that you could peel and package individually, and then they were mild-flavored and really fun to play with. Like I just said, the best way to capture a customer base with young folk is to make sure the food is something they can mess around with and have fun eating, not just open and consume. Though, if you really want to make a name for yourself in the cutthroat world of lunchbox adequate snacks, where even the slightest change in mood and tastes can mean your hard-earned product ends up going out the window, you need to consider the tastes of parents too. See, it's not just about what makes a good lunchbox meal for kids, but also what makes a good meal for their parents. Is it easy to prepare? Is it too much of a fuss? Is the packaging easy to open? Does it have basic snack appeal that caters to a lot of basic things kids look for in food? All valid questions that string cheese answered by simply being an incredibly amazing snack and meal. Iced honey buns were these individually wrapped pastries that had a pretty sweet and soft bun-like texture and the most visually appealing and delicious frosting. They were actually a little more popular with girls than they were with boys, but don't let that fool you into thinking it was a completely one-sided domination. Boys were known to get pretty busy with these iced honey buns because, hey, good food is good food. The glaze, the fluffiness of the bun, the first bite that felt like heaven, and only made recess that much better. These were all common experiences of kids that grew up with these honey buns in their lunchboxes, and since they were just so easy to fit in one, it meant less work for the parents too. The filling really kept these going, and they were perfect for children in private schools who often had parents going to work early and not being able to cater to a high-effort breakfast for their children, which I think is another separate conversation we really need to have. Handy snacks were some of the best things that Kraft ever gave us. They were one of the finest cheese spreads you could ever make the decision of buying, and if this is how you were spending your money, then you were definitely doing it the right way. The most easily recognizable version had these red plastic sticks that kids would use to scoop up the cheese and put it onto crackers. By the way, is that a little weird to you? That young kids in like the 3rd or 4th grade would be having crackers for breakfast? That just really goes to show the impact of the whole World War period on America as a whole. Kids really had to become used to eating things like these for breakfast every day because other options just were not widely available or affordable at the time. Don't even get me started on the fiasco that was the stock market crash. But hard times make for frugal food, which makes for a palate that can appreciate a lot of different kinds of food and combos. That's one benefit that kids had back then that they just don't have today. To them, a lot of snacks could come in handy. And no, that pun wasn't intentional. The convenience of a handy was definitely in its pre-portioned packaging, which meant that parents didn't even have to worry about anything. They just had to pair these crackers with cheese and give them some condiments on the side, and voila, you had your child's breakfast done and dusted already, under $1 and in just half a minute. Can you really argue with the value for money there? I mean, I don't plan to be a parent soon, but I do have a cat, and prepackaged easy-to-go-for food is just a lifesaver in ways I can't describe. I wonder if it's the same for actual parents. I'm sure a lot of you do come from healthy, happy families, so let me know in the comments if this kind of food is something you'd prefer. Teddy Grahams were introduced by Nabisco somewhere in the late 1980s, and they were these bite-sized graham crackers that had been shaped like teddy bears, available in flavors like honey, cinnamon, chocolate, and a lot more. Their adorable little shapes and that soft afternote of sweetness made them a hit with children. They had a flavor that hit all the right spots, but just wasn't overpowering or even too bland. It was right in that perfect middle ground. It meant that kids could get addicted to the stuff. Honestly. The thing about snacks like sour candy is exactly that they're better as a few bites, not a snack you keep binging on, because they're overpowering. The thing about snacks like crackers is that they work great as binge material, but don't really mean much as far as a fulfilling food experience goes, because they're just a little too bland. Teddy Grahams by Nabisco had the equation more or less solved. They had a perfect design that made them really appealing to kids, they were easy to share, and they fit either as desserts or as the perfect combo for a cheese spread or sandwich. Plus, they were made using whole grains, which meant that as far as their PR with parents was considered, they were doing pretty well. Parents were suckers for snacks that did even the barest of minimums with their nutritional value. And this is a pretty solid example. I mean, whole grains are good, but if health really is your concern, you need a lot more out of your breakfast. Still, no one can argue they had extreme value for money. For real, you didn't need anything more than a few packets of these and a nice spread to have a decent meal at school. Throwing it way back now, General Mills Shark Bites were perhaps the most loved fruit snacks that made every lunchbox taste better. The aquatic, fruity little gummies are a distant memory for many of us now, but back then, the sharks made everyone's day as the perfect dessert to their lunch. I particularly find the rise to fame of Shark Bites quite interesting. You see, in 1975, the famous film Jaws released, and kids all across America were taken by a storm. The success of the film caused children to fall in love with sharks, and Shark Bites seemed to be the perfect snack parents could give their children to keep them happy. It was a pretty big flex in school if you had a pack of Shark Bites on you, maybe even made you famous across school. Jaws wasn't the only element that attracted kids. General Mills came out with a challenge for students. Each pack of Shark Bites would have different shaped sharks that were blue, but some rare packs would have a great white gummy shark. You would have to fish through packets of shark bites to find this rare gummy, adding to the excitement of the students. Do you understand why shark bites were so popular now? If General Mills brings back these snacks, I'd be the first in line to buy them. Yogurt has always been a lunch students avoided, but Go-Gurt changed all of that. Picture this. It's lunchtime, you've got your cool retro lunchbox, and Go-Gurt is right there in the mix. You didn't even need a spoon to eat this treat. Parents loved Go-Gurt because they finally found a way they could sneak healthy yogurt in their children's lunchboxes. We all know it was the fun packaging and wild flavors like Berry Blast and Strawberry Banana that made it feel like a treat, and kids just ate them up every time they opened their box during recess. Another big win for Go-Gurt was its freezer-friendly design. Freezing it could turn it into a mini ice pop by lunchtime, and it also helped the yogurt last longer if you were packing it in a lunchbox without an ice pack. Go-Gurt has gone on to become a staple snack, not just for lunches, but for all kinds of kid-friendly occasions, with plenty of variations like Simply Go-Gurt and Slurp Go-Gurt, which was a bigger packet. I can assure you that Yolpate, the manufacturing company of Go-Gurt, really aced the idea of making healthy food fun. Concentrate cereal was an interesting lunch cereal that parents would sneak into their children's lunchbox, and surprisingly, children fell in love with this cereal. Kellogg's Concentrate cereal launched way back in 1959, and although it was a little different from the colorful, sugary cereals kids loved, it was actually a hit. This cereal was all about packing in the nutrition, which made it a unique choice for health-conscious families. Imagine small, crisp flakes in a tiny box that were practically bursting with protein, vitamins, and minerals, designed to give families a diet insurance of nutrients. You could add it to almost anything, from soups and casseroles to waffles and salads, which made it a perfect companion for mothers who were wondering what lunch should be packed in the morning. People loved the taste and the idea that it was filling, yet low-calorie at 106 per ounce. Kellogg's discontinued the cereal by 1981, but Concentrate remains one of those cereals that fans remember fondly as an interesting and very customizable quick lunch. For many, it was more than just cereal. It is a forgotten lunch partner that must be brought back by Kellogg's. Now, animal crackers made a journey from the United Kingdom to the United States in the late 19th century. Categorized as both crackers and biscuits, animal crackers quickly made their place in the lunchboxes of several young students in the United States. Stauffer's Biscuit Company were the first bakers to produce animal crackers locally in America because of how popular these biscuits grew. Students fell in love with the biscuits shaped in animals like lions, tigers, bears, and elephants baked to perfection and packed in small lunchbox-sized packages. While these crackers had been available since the 1890s, 1970s onward was when they really caught wind amongst schools because of how readily available they were. Until before the 70s, crackers were generally sold only in bulk or in large tins. But with small packaged treats, the small cartons, which retailed for 5 cents at the time of their release, were a big hit and are still sold today. Trust me, I still eat animal crackers from time to time, so I know what the hype was about when our mothers packed them in our lunches. Saving the best for last, in the early 1900s, the Jackson Cracker Company of Jackson, Michigan, developed a small, round cracker called the Jackson. The company was bought by Nabisco in 1919. Nabisco introduced the Ritz Bits cracker in 1934. Little did they know that these salty, cheesy crackers would go on to become a household lunch item that every child would urge their parents to buy. Even if you think about Ritz Bits right now, you may be getting hungry just thinking about the bite-sized, disc-shaped, and lightly salted crackers. I don't know about you, but I am getting hungry just thinking about them. It is no wonder why these crackers got so famous. Round, biscuit-shaped, salty crackers make for the perfect munchie that children can eat after a long day of school and studies. It also helped that the packets were so small that they could fit right in your lunchbox without causing any trouble. Ritz Bits were truly an iconic snack. Fried chicken patties were introduced to American schools in the 1980s and quickly became a favorite due to their similarity to popular fast food. These patties are made from ground chicken mixed with spices, then breaded with flour and breadcrumbs to create a crispy outer layer. The frying process transforms these prepared patties into golden, crunchy delights with a juicy interior, typically served as sandwiches or with sides like fries. The method of preparing these patties is well suited to the high-volume requirements of school cafeterias, involving simple steps that can be executed quickly: mixing, forming, breading, and frying. This efficiency ensures that delicious hot meals can be served promptly, reducing wait times and maximizing student satisfaction during lunch breaks. Boiled hot dogs have been a long-standing favorite in American school cafeterias, known for their simple, tasty, and quick preparation. Made from a blend of beef and pork, these hot dogs are seasoned and boiled, served in a soft bun with a variety of condiments like ketchup, mustard, and relish. This cooking method is particularly effective in school environments as it allows for hot dogs to be prepared en masse and kept warm. The simplicity of boiled hot dogs makes them a reliable choice for school cafeterias, where the lunch period is often brief and the demand for quick service is high. Additionally, the familiarity and ease of customization of hot dogs meet diverse student preferences, making them a popular and comforting choice. This meal option not only satisfies hunger swiftly, but also aligns with the logistical needs of serving hundreds of students. Salisbury steak was incorporated into school menus in the 1960s, providing a hearty and appealing option. Named after Dr. James H. Salisbury, who advocated a meat-centric diet, it features ground beef mixed with eggs, breadcrumbs, and spices, shaped into patties and simmered in gravy. This method of preparation allows for bulk cooking, ideal for school settings where efficiency and volume are necessary. Salisbury steak offers significant nutritional value with its high protein content, making it a satisfying meal that supports the physical needs of growing students. The gravy not only adds flavor, but also keeps the patties moist and appealing throughout the serving period. Its rich flavor and tender texture have made it a favorite among students, ensuring it remains a popular choice in school cafeterias. Tater tots were born out of innovation in 1953 by the founders of Ida Golden and Francis Neefy Grigg. Utilizing leftover potato scraps from their French fry production, they created a new snack by chopping these remnants finely, mixing them with flour and seasonings, and forming them into small cylinders before deep frying them to a golden crisp. This process not only provided an efficient solution to food waste, but also produced a snack that was perfectly crispy on the outside while remaining fluffy inside. Tater tots are particularly popular as a side dish, but can also feature in recipes like casseroles, making them a versatile component of school lunches. The method of preparing tater tots involves deep frying, which, while requiring careful temperature control to achieve the perfect crunch without burning, fits well within the capabilities of large kitchen operations in schools. Sloppy Joes have been a staple in American school cafeterias since their introduction in the mid-20th century. This dish features ground beef or pork that is sautéed with onions and garlic until browned, then simmered in a savory tomato-based sauce seasoned with Worcestershire sauce and other spices. The thick, hearty mixture is then spooned onto soft hamburger buns, creating a filling and flavorful sandwich that is both messy and delightful to eat. The preparation requires minimal kitchen equipment and ingredients that are staples in most school pantries, making it a cost-effective choice for feeding a large number of students. Moreover, the ability to prepare the meat mixture ahead of time and quickly assemble the sandwiches during busy lunch periods enhances its practicality. The familiarity of the flavors, combined with the satisfying nature of the sandwich, ensures that Sloppy Joes remain a cherished option within school meal programs. Macaroni and cheese loaf emerged as a popular variation in the 1970s when schools sought to diversify their menu offerings while still providing comforting and familiar foods. This dish takes the beloved elements of traditional macaroni and cheese, a mixture of cooked macaroni and creamy cheese sauce, and adds eggs and breadcrumbs to bind the ingredients into a solid loaf that can be easily sliced. The loaf is baked until the exterior is slightly crispy and golden, offering a textural contrast to the soft, cheesy interior. This format not only makes serving more efficient, but also reduces food waste, as the loaf can be cut into precise portions. Fish sticks became part of the school lunch menu shortly after their commercial introduction in the 1950s. Made from white fish like cod or pollock, These sticks are cut into manageable pieces, breaded and then deep-fried or baked to create a crispy exterior with a tender and flaky interior. This preparation method not only makes fish sticks easy to eat, but also appealing to the palates of young students, who may otherwise be reluctant to consume fish. The breading, often seasoned with spices and herbs, adds a savory flavor that complements the mild taste of the fish, making it a popular choice in school cafeterias. Fish sticks are typically served with tartar sauce or ketchup and a side of vegetables, providing a balanced meal with proteins, carbs, and vitamins. Their ease of preparation, including the ability to cook them from frozen, aligns well with the needs of large-scale meal production typical in schools. Creamed corn is prepared by cooking sweet corn kernels until tender and then mixing them with a creamy sauce made from milk, butter, and a thickener such as flour or cornstarch. Seasoned lightly, usually with salt and pepper, and sometimes enhanced with sugar to bring out the natural sweetness of the corn, creamed corn is a favorite in school cafeterias for its smooth, slightly sweet flavor profile that appeals to young eaters. This dish serves as an excellent way to incorporate vegetables into students' diets in a form that is generally more palatable to children who may be picky eaters. Its popularity in schools is reinforced by its nutritional content, offering a good source of fiber and vitamins while being gentle on young stomachs. Creamed corn's ability to be kept warm in serving trays without losing texture or flavor makes it particularly suited to the cafeteria setting, where dishes need to remain appealing throughout the serving period. Bread pudding offers a creative solution for utilizing leftover bread in school cafeterias, turning potential waste into a delectable dessert. This dish is typically prepared by cubing stale bread and soaking it in a mixture made from milk, eggs, sugar, and vanilla, which infuses it with rich flavors and a soft texture. Often, additions like raisins or cinnamon are mixed in to enhance the taste and appeal of the pudding. Bread pudding is then baked until the top layer caramelizes into a golden crust, contrasting beautifully with the creamy custard-like interior. This dessert is particularly popular in schools due to its economical benefits and the comfort it provides to students. The warm, sweet nature of bread pudding makes it a welcomed treat, encouraging students to partake in school meals while providing them with a source of energy. Creamed spinach in school cafeterias combines nutritional value with palatable presentation, making it a favored vegetable dish among students. The preparation starts with fresh or frozen spinach, which is thoroughly washed and then cooked down until it wilts. A creamy sauce made from a blend of milk, flour, and butter is prepared separately, seasoned with a hint of nutmeg or garlic to enrich the flavor profile. The spinach is then incorporated into the sauce, which gently coats the leaves, creating a smooth and appealing texture. This dish not only adds a vibrant color to the plate, but also increases the intake of greens in students' diets, providing essential nutrients like iron, vitamin A, and calcium. The combination of creamy texture and mild flavors often helps to introduce and encourage a preference for vegetables among younger children, supporting school nutrition programs in their goal to foster healthier eating habits. Rice pudding is a classic dessert that finds its way into school menus, beloved for its simplicity and comforting qualities. Made by slowly simmering rice in milk until the grains are tender, this pudding is sweetened with sugar and typically flavored with vanilla, cinnamon, or even a bit of citrus zest to elevate the dish's aroma and taste. The slow cooking process allows the rice to absorb the flavors and the milk to thicken into a rich, creamy texture. Rice pudding can be served either warm or chilled, making it a versatile option for different seasons and preferences. Its gentle, creamy texture and the mild, sweet flavor profile make it an excellent choice for a school dessert, offering a source of carbohydrate and calcium. Peanut butter and jelly bars take the quintessential American sandwich and transform it into a dessert format that is both nostalgic and delicious. This treat is prepared by layering a base of crumbly, buttery dough in a baking dish, spreading a generous amount of peanut butter and then jelly over the base, and topping it with more of the crumbly dough. The bars are then baked until the topping is lightly browned, resulting in a dessert that is rich in flavor and has a satisfying texture contrast between the soft filling and the crunchy topping. These bars incorporate the familiar flavors of peanut butter and jelly in a form that is easy to distribute and consume, making them an excellent addition to school lunch menus. Peanut butter and jelly bars not only provide a source of energy, but also bring a sense of comfort and nostalgia to the dining hall. American chop suey is a comfort food classic that has found a niche in American school cafeterias, combining practicality with palatability. This dish melds ground beef, elbow macaroni, and a tomato-based sauce seasoned with onions and bell peppers, all simmered together to allow the flavors to fully integrate. The preparation begins with sautéing onions and bell peppers until they are soft, adding the ground beef to brown, and then incorporating the cooked macaroni and tomato sauce. This mixture is seasoned with herbs such as oregano or basil, and sometimes a dash of Worcestershire sauce for deeper flavor complexity. American chop suey is particularly valued in school settings for its ability to be made in large volumes economically, using ingredients that are staples in most school kitchens. It's also well suited for holding and serving over extended periods, which is essential in a busy cafeteria environment. Potato patties are a creative and delicious way to utilize leftover ingredients, transforming simple mashed potatoes into something special. Mixed with eggs and a little flour to help bind them, seasoned with salt, pepper, and often additional flavors like finely chopped onions or herbs, these patties are then shaped into rounds. The next step involves pan-frying them in a little oil until each side turns golden brown and crispy, creating a delightful contrast to the soft interior. Each batch can be made efficiently, serving many students without requiring extensive cooking time. They can be featured as a vegetarian entree or a side dish, complemented by various dips and sauces that enhance their flavor. This versatility makes them an invaluable addition to the school menu. Powdered milk in school cafeterias serves as a practical alternative to fresh milk, particularly valued for its extended shelf life and lower cost. This dehydrated dairy product is reconstituted by adding water. Powdered milk is often used not only as a beverage, but also as an ingredient in various recipes, from baked goods to mashed potatoes, enhancing their calcium and protein content. Although it may lack some of the flavor nuances of fresh milk, it remains an important nutritional component, offering essential nutrients such as vitamins D and A. The use of powdered milk in schools is driven by logistical advantages. It requires no refrigeration and can be stored for long periods, making it ideal for large-scale food service operations where efficiency and cost-effectiveness are priorities. Its inclusion in school meal programs ensures that students receive sufficient daily dairy intake, supporting their overall health and development within the constraints of school budgets. Corned beef and cabbage offers a cultural touchstone in school menus, particularly around St. Patrick's Day, providing a festive and educational meal. This dish involves slow-cooking corned beef in a spiced brine until it is tender, then adding chunks of cabbage that cook until just tender, absorbing the rich flavors of the meat. Corned beef and cabbage is not only a nod to cultural heritage, but also a balanced meal, offering a good mix of protein and vitamins from the cabbage. In school settings, this dish serves as a special menu item that can educate students about international cuisine while providing a nutritious and flavorful meal. Its preparation, while requiring more time than some other dishes, is relatively straightforward and can be executed with basic kitchen equipment, making it feasible for special occasions in schools. Steak and kidney pudding is an example of a traditional British dish that occasionally makes its way into American school cafeterias, especially in areas with British influences. The preparation involves dicing steak and kidney, mixing these with a rich, thick gravy, and encasing the mixture in a sweet pastry. This assembly is then steamed for several hours, ensuring the meat is tender and the pastry is cooked through. The result is a savory filling pudding that offers a unique dining experience, typically reserved for special events or educational days, focusing on international cuisine. This dish not only introduces students to different culinary traditions, but also provides a substantial meal. Buttered corn is a straightforward yet beloved side dish in school cafeterias, consisting mainly of corn kernels that are gently steamed to maintain their crispness and natural sweetness, then tossed with a moderate amount of butter and a pinch of salt to enhance the flavor. Buttered corn's appeal in educational settings lies in its simplicity and the universal appeal of its sweet and buttery flavor, which makes it a hit among students of all ages. It serves not only as a tasty addition to various main dishes, but also as a way to provide a vegetable option that is both nutritious and enjoyable. The inclusion of corn as a regular item on school menus ensures that students receive a good source of vitamins, minerals, and fiber, contributing to a balanced diet. The ease of preparation and the ability to keep the dish warm without compromising its quality make buttered corn a practical choice for school meals. General Foods had a strong competitor in General Mills with their Squeeze Its, which were these fruit-flavored drinks that came in bottles you had to squeeze to get the drink out. Yes, the irony of both of their names is not lost on us before you say anything. Still, the branding is pretty brilliant when you think about it. It ties the experience, appearance, and name all together in one neat little package. Of course, people did not buy them to appreciate the efforts of the PR team, but because they were the perfect thing to take the edge off on a hot summer day. It disappeared around 2001, lasting around 26 years since its 1985 debut, and while it had some reintroductions in the market, it could not gain enough momentum to sustain itself. High-C Ecto Coolers were these drinks you could get which were specifically Ghostbuster-themed, and were a part of a collaboration effort between High-C and the Ghostbusters promotion campaigns. It worked pretty well since the green-colored drink meant to imitate a stereotypical image of what ectoplasm looks like, which is a liquid supposedly let out by super-powerful ghosts, sold numbers throughout the United States. While being a temporary addition of the High-C cooler drinks, it was both for its flavor and unique design a very appreciated beverage, and most teenagers and young adults would regularly buy packs of the stuff. You could get half a dozen or more for just $1 and some cents, which was a steal. Guess pre-inflation living was something else entirely, right? French Toast Crunch was another genius innovation by General Mills, and it was this cereal meant to mimic the popular breakfast by having French toast-shaped cereal. They looked like mini slices, but later they gave it a glow-up and it started looking like Cinnamon Toast Crunch. Instead of slices, you now had thin squares, but this was not as successful as the original design, as people particularly did not vibe with the thinner cereal. General Mills launched this in the middle of the 1990s when French toast itself was quite a common breakfast to wake up to for many people, but they discontinued it in 2006 as it was not making enough money to warrant the cost of making it. However, people seemed to disagree pretty heavily with General Mills as petitions popped up, and a lot of fans of the cereal demanded they bring it back. They did reintroduce it in 2014, but the flavor and texture is a lot different from the original box you could find in the 90s. In a way, the authentic French Toast Crunch cereal is lost to time. As we move from the 70s to the 80s to the 90s in terms of our lineup of foods, it would not be fair to start talking about the 2000s without mentioning Altoid sours. Mars Wrigley first came out with the sour drop candy in the start of the 2000s, which in itself was a decade that defined a lot of what we have today, but this one is a fond memory that only some remember. With an attractive packaging consisting of these super colorful metal tins and an incredibly versatile and quality line of flavors, this candy would always be something you could bet on finding in your friend's bag. Hit versions like tangerine, raspberry, apple, mango, and citrus meant that it had every preference and audience covered. Altoid sours worked so well because they struck the line between refreshingly sour and fruity in a perfect way. To this day, despite iconic candy's re-release of the sour drops under the name Retro Sours, the original taste is not matched. Nabisco came out with the most adorable cookies when they put Giggle cookies out on shelves everywhere for the public to enjoy. Now usually, just having a smiley face-based snack is not enough to clear shelves out during grocery shopping trips, but when the snack was a sandwich cookie with many different fillings, each as rich as the last one, that goal starts to look a little more realistic. Kids would often eat them and collect the stickers that came with the packages, putting them on their toys and cars and whatnot. Some people do claim that they found the smiley design a bit unsettling, but all that would usually go away when they would taste the snack. Guess you can call that love at first bite, and honestly, good sandwich cookies have a way of doing that to you. Another snack that kids could never let go of in the 90s were these shark bites, which are exactly what they sound like. Gummies shaped like sharks that would come in this teal-blue packet with a massive, friendly-looking shark on them. Now, the design may not have been the most inspiring, but the taste was really innovative. Nobody ever had gummies like these, and most gummies out there did not match the intensity of the flavor or the softness of the bites. Most kids were especially strong fans of the white shark gummies, which tasted amazing. Plus, kids would buy packets of these to find rarer shark bites like the tiger shark. As far as fruity food went, this was hard to beat, and just like the animal it takes after, it reigned as an apex predator. Of course, people did not buy them to appreciate the efforts of the PR team, but because they were the perfect thing to take the edge off on a hot summer day. People have been eating popcorn in movie contexts since before our grandfathers were born, so that is really saying something. If you could get a whiff or taste of these like they used to be back then, you would know the hype was pretty understandable. They lasted 25 years up until Planters eventually took them off shelves in 2006, but popular demand would have them returning in 2018 with an entirely new packaging. Not that it was too different from the black cans we used to have, but what was now unfamiliar was the taste. People thought they were getting their beloved cheese balls back, but unfortunately, once you lose a snack, you never get it back the same way. Ever had those breadsticks that came with dip? Dunkaroos were a lot like that, except they were chocolate cookies that were accompanied by a frosting dip, which was all kinds of delicious. One of the most popular flavors in the 90s was the vanilla one, but it made a comeback later in the 2000s with the chocolate cookies and frosting flavor. However, it was still discontinued, as nostalgia baiting can only get you so far if you stray from what originally gathered your fan base. Nowadays, they are just a snack that people do not give too much attention to, except those who grew up with it. But back then, if your mom packed this for lunch, you were the kid everyone wanted to sit with. Some snacks have really short lifespans but really long-lasting impacts, and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle pies were the definition of that. These green pies, which came with a delectable pudding for dipping, were only on the market for 20 weeks before they were taken off, but people flocked to them like moths to a bright flame. Those 20 weeks were pretty bad for some other snacks, since everybody wanted to blow whatever change they had solely on Ninja Turtle pies. The best part was that it would always be in bulk, since one packet did not cost too much. They were stocking these up for the entire family, which makes sense since people had an idea that this collaboration would not last too long, and how right they were. A bit before the days of General Foods and General Mills, we had post-consumer brands who made their debut in America with Dino Pebbles. These colorful, fruity cereals featured cameos from characters from one of the most iconic cartoon shows of all time, the Flintstones. They would be called the Spookstoons, and a character called Dino. Besides the original fruity cereal flavor, they also had Cocoa Pebbles, which had crisp rice cereal. However, what a lot of people do not know, despite having grown up with this, is that Dino Pebbles were an imitation of Sugar Rice Crinkles, which did pretty well when they came out a while before Dino. Dino Pebbles got discontinued in 1993, just 3 years after they came out, but breakfast in those years was glorious. Many people ran campaigns to bring Dino Pebbles back, however the agenda was not fruitful. Soon, one of the utmost favorite snacks of the masses was off the shelves in order to make space for better and newer cereals. Speaking of the tropical, Libby's Fruit Float was a deeply beloved canned item that had real fruit in it, but that was not the kicker. Fruit floats truly shined when they were mixed with milk, which resulted in this incredibly light but pudding-like dessert. The benefit was that it barely took 5 minutes to whip up, yet it felt like a meal that took an hour to recreate. They had different variations of the fruit float, like the 10-second one, which you could easily make with some milk, the float, and strawberries, and more complicated ones like the 10-minute fruit float, which turned it into a proper dessert. Despite getting discontinued a while after its 1974 introduction, this was one of the sweetest things you could buy and is dearly missed. Hubble Bubble Squeeze Pops were on the opposite end of the spectrum, as they were a snack that people who appreciated more bitter flavors loved dearly. Squeeze Pops came in flavors such as sour apple, sour watermelon, and sour blue raspberry, with a really retro and funky tube. The entire gimmick was that you had to squeeze it out of the tube to get it, which added a lot of weird satisfaction to the snack. You would think having to grip something hard to get your food out would make it less convenient and more annoying, but it seemed to have the opposite effect with the Squeeze Pops. Fans of the tube claimed that the flavor was so vivid and strong that it would actually take a while to finish one tiny serving, since if you ate it up too fast, you would get overwhelmed. Unfortunately, interest in them waned over the years, and Hubba Bubba discontinued the brand. Munch M's were Keebler's claim to fame, as these were one of the most trending crackers of the 1960s when they first came out. They continued to ride that high well into the 90s until they eventually met their end in the 2000s. Of course, most breakfast products do have a lifespan that companies expect. What Keebler never expected was how popular these would get, since even they did not know they had struck gold. Yellowish, tiny, and incredibly crunchy, Munch'ems tasted like crackers but had the same crunch and texture that a chip did. It was actually incredible how they managed to offer the best of both worlds like that, since crackers usually did not feel like eating a chip at all. Moreover, these were pretty good with some butter, which was a go-to choice for many Americans when they wanted an easy breakfast. Let's head on over to chocolate bars, and we have a pretty solid banger in that field to bring to you. Kudo's granola bars were these milk chocolate granola cereal bars that Mars came up with in 1986, and they had a nutty sensation with a cocoa-centric flavor. The initial lineup of flavors consisted of nutty fudge, peanut butter, and chocolate, but future flavors would be Dove chocolate, M&Ms, and Snickers as well. The very first batches of the granola bar were a lot less granola and a lot more candy, despite being marketed as a healthy alternative to your typical candy bars. While they sold pretty well for being a rather bold and daring experiment, combining both typical candy notes with a chocolatey granola snack, Mars would discontinue them in 2017 as they were performing very poorly, and people did not see them as a healthy option. Nestle's Quick Chocolate Milk Mix was the savior of mothers all around America. Kids would get up for school sharp at 6 a.m., and while the adults would have their tea or black coffee extra strong, the young would wake themselves up by a glass of hot chocolate milk. Nestle's powder was one of the tastiest and most vibrant ones out there. It really had this comfortable chocolate flavor that was not too overbearing but not too light either. You just had to pour in the milk, the powder, and heat it up for a minute, and you were good to go. A lot of school days and early morning math classes went easier, just because this was served up right before them. As of recently, Nestle has discontinued the powder, since it is not doing as well as the 20th century era, but an entire generation of kids got their 7 a.m. nutrition thanks to this. Nobody knew exactly what was going on in the design room of Walls as they came up with Funny Feet, which was this popular strawberry ice cream that was, of all things, foot-shaped. While it came out in the 1980s, the company got a lot of mileage out of this product, even into the 90s, which was an extremely competitive era where all kinds of new food snacks were being invented. It was like a rat race to see who could come up with the next big thing, and Walls would not disappoint. However, despite staying in the race for a while, Funny Feet couldn't win as they did get axed during the late 1990s. An official in the company said it lost to things like Magnum, another popular ice cream launched in the same decade. Maybe they should have tried Hands instead. Ice creams were not all that was coming out. Even yogurt was seeing some love with things like Dannon's Sprinklins in 1992, which was this yogurt with candy bits in it. There were lots of flavors, and you would get a separate packet of sprinkles to mix into the yogurt. Dannon was trying something new, keeping both the healthy side of its target audience in mind, along with the mass appeal and potential of candy. But it failed to incorporate both into something that really clicked. Sprinklins were discontinued in the 2000s due to low sales and underperformance, and the company does not seem to have any plans to bring this one back. Just a few years after the Sprinklins, post-consumer brands came up with Waffle Crisp, which was the same concept as Sprinklins but with waffles and cereal instead of yogurt and candy. It tried to make this corn cereal, which was square-shaped but contained maple syrup-flavored corn cereal bits, and it first came out in 1996. While others trying to make a mass-marketable gem out of fusion experiments did not find much success, Waffle Crisp still gained enough traction to last into the 2010s before it got discontinued. Post Foods did try to bring it back in 2021, but it just was not the same goodness as before. Maybe they changed their maple syrup, but why fix a clock that is not broken? Kellogg's Yogos were also a famous moment for candy and snacks that made their debut in 2005, and they were at first pretty similar to M&Ms in both the general premise and the look of the snack. The difference was that these were covered in a crunchy yogurt shell, but they were fruit-flavored and more chewy than crunchy. People always wondered if the different colors meant different flavors like in M&Ms, but nobody cared about that too much since the munch factor outweighed everything else. Only 5 years later, they would get shelved, pun intended, and disappear, and this was because there were health concerns about the amount of sugar in the snacks. America's dietary problems seem to have some pretty long-held roots, but our snack game is truly on point even with all the discontinuations. This video made me hungry, so I'll go grab myself a snack from my lunchbox. If you liked the video, leave a like and subscribe.